Once there was an old man who owned a number of Saint Bernard dogs, said Daddy. One night they camped near a small settlement. The old man had found sticks and wood, and the dogs had carried it along on the sleds. So they had a huge fire. They got nice and warm and had a supper of the provisions they'd brought and which, too, the dogs had carried. But a storm could be seen coming, and the snow was flying so fast it was almost blinding. The old man rolled the dogs up in warm rugs, and then, rolling up in a sleeping bag, he went fast asleep. He had not been asleep long before he was awakened by one of the biggest Saint Bernard dogs, who was tugging at his sleeping bag. "What is it, my beauty?" asked the old man. Still the dog tugged at the bag. The old man was so sleepy at first he was half dazed, but he opened his eyes. Slowly he realized that someone must be suffering nearby, for he heard a strange wailing sound as of someone in distress. He got up, put on some warm things, and, hitching some of the dogs to a sled, they started out into the blizzard. They went toward the place where the sound of the wailing came from, and there, half buried in the snow, they found a man almost frozen to death. The old man, with the help of the dogs, put him on the big sled and dragged him back to their camp. There the old man rubbed him, and by the fire he began to recover. He said he had started out for another settlement to find food and had become blinded by the snow until he could go no farther. He was so grateful to the old man for saving his life. But the old man told him that the dog had been the rescuer. A little girl named Polly, said Daddy, could hardly wait for her birthday to come. She had been thinking about it for a long time, and at last there was only one more night and the birthday would actually be here. It was bedtime and Polly was ready for bed. "I'm going to stay awake for ages," she said to herself, "and try to guess what Mother and Daddy are going to give me, and what we'll have to eat at the party. I do hope it will be ice cream. I am a little afraid it won't be, though, because when I asked Mother about it, she said that perhaps it would be nice to have a change. Nothing is so nice as ice cream for a birthday party." "That's true," said a jolly little creature, who suddenly appeared before her. "Who are you?" asked Polly. "I'm the birthday goblin." "That is, I am one of the birthday goblins, for there are a good many of us needed for our work. There are such lots of birthdays," and the goblin tossed his head and laughed. "And," continued the goblin, "I tell mothers and daddies not to forget the good, old-fashioned way of putting a ring, a thimble and a button in the cake. I have to see about the presents, too, for how will I know what the girls and boys like as presents? That's our business, you know. Are we going to have ice cream tomorrow?" asked Polly. "Yes," said the goblin. "Your mother took my suggestions so quickly. I didn't have to coax her at all. But your birthday is here and the sun has been up some time. Goodbye, happy birthday." And as Polly opened her eyes, her mother was by her bed, whispering that always wonderful birthday wish of many happy returns of the day. "You have heard," said Daddy, "how Abraham Lincoln pretended the cabbages which he grew in his garden were real people and how he named them. The straightest and very best-looking one he named General Strong, and another he named Captain Brave. One more he admired especially and thought it an exceptionally fine-looking cabbage. He called it Mr. President, and little did he then think that he, the little boy, would be president when he grew up. I have one little story to tell you tonight which I don't think you've heard before," said Daddy. "When the present king of Siam was a little boy and his governess was teaching him American history, he became so impressed with Abraham Lincoln and his freeing of the slaves and the tragedy of his death, that he said, 'When I become king the first will free the slaves of the palace.' Will you promise me that?" his governess asked, and the little boy promised. And when he became king all of the wives and slaves of the royal palace, 400 or 500, were freed and were given money and assistance to get fresh starts as free people. That story came to me," Daddy continued, "from my own mother who knew the governess, and I have never told it to you two children before. And while it is splendid to think of a little boy in far-off Siam loving and following the great example of our splendid Lincoln, still I've been thinking today that the greatest thing of all is that we all know Lincoln so well that we can hardly find a new story to tell of him. He was so simple, so human, so real a person that we have all grown to know him, not only as a president and a magnificent figure in history, but as Abraham Lincoln, the man of the people." "A little girl named Isa had been very ill in a large city hospital," said Daddy. "But at last a joyful time came when Isa really seemed to be on the road to getting well, and very happy her mother and Daddy were. 'Oh, little Isa,' said her Daddy, 'we're going to have a surprise for you. You know tonight is St. Valentine's Eve, and I have an idea my little daughter may be going to have all kinds of bright, heart-shaped presents.' 'Oh, Daddy,' said Isa, Instead of giving just me a Valentine party, couldn't we have one for all the children in the hospital? I'm well enough to be moved into the big ward, and all the children who are able to be there can have a party with me, and we can have a huge Valentine party. Oh, couldn't we do that, Daddy? Yes, indeed, said her daddy. So in the evening the big ward was bright with red hearts strung from the ceiling and hanging over the beds. The lights were covered with red paper shades, and in the very center of the room was an enormous big heart. And what do you suppose was in the heart? What? Asked Evelyn eagerly. Why, for every child there was a red ribbon. Each child pulled one ribbon attached to the heart, and at the end was a beautiful present. Saint Valentine, said Daddy, was a bishop in the 3rd century. That was many, many years ago. He was a very good, kind man and always went about doing kind things for people. But some of the Romans didn't like him, and in those days the people were cruel. If they didn't like anyone or imagined he might do them harm, they had him beheaded, and Bishop Valentine, as he was then called, was beheaded. His friends felt dreadfully that such a good man should be so cruelly murdered, and for days they could talk of nothing else but of the good Bishop Valentine, and they'd tell one another of all his good deeds and of his love for all people and of his kindnesses. The older people would tell their children about him until before long they began to speak of him as Saint Valentine, and that name clung to him, so that ever since then, through all the years that have passed, he has always been known as Saint Valentine, and although he was so cruelly beheaded, still his deeds of charity and kindness will always be known. You see, that is why we send Valentines around to tell people we're thinking of them and are fond of them, and we call them Valentines because they're nice, thoughtful messages and are like the dear old Saint Valentine. I misbehave most frightfully if children don't pay me attention, said the ink well. Yes, said the desk. And then you make me suffer. Do you really know what I mean? Asked the ink well. Of course, said the desk. If, for instance, a little girl or a boy is pouring from the great big grandfather ink bottle and is giving you something more in the way of a nice inky fluid or drink, and if the little girl looks the other way, you spill. I don't spill. I turn a somersault, or I trickle down the desk. Yes, down me, said the desk. And do you think it is very nice to make me suffer? Ha, ha, laughed the ink well, as if you cared whether I trickled down over you or not. You are made of wood and you don't care. That's so, agreed the desk, but even if I am made of wood I like to be varnished and made over nice and fresh every little while. It's just like having one's face washed. But people who have their faces washed, said the ink well, though I do believe they always wash their faces themselves, do so far more than once a year. That is as often as you get your face washed or varnished. Well, I'm made of wood, you see, said the desk, and so I don't care. Once a year does quite nicely for me. Besides, it would be quite utterly useless any oftener, for you'd only spill over me and I'd get quite horrid looking. That's polite of you, I'm sure, said the ink well, to say you'd look horrid with some of my nice ink on you. It adds a lot, I think. It may add ink, said the desk, but it doesn't add beauty. But the school bell was ringing, and so the desk and ink well were silent. For over 2 weeks a little boy has followed me around, said the sun. Whatever do you mean? Asked the sun rays. He has been ill. He has had a very, very bad cold. Oh, he has been so wretched and he has not felt like doing anything. A little boy is pretty ill when he doesn't feel like doing anything and wants to stay quiet. That's true, said the sun rays. For how often they had seen small boys scampering and playing, and sometimes they had danced, too, for joy. The doctor comes every day, continued the sun. Sometimes he comes twice a day, and once he came 3 times. But every time he comes he tells the little boy always to sit in the sun. And he has been following me around. When I am shining into one window in the morning, there I see the little boy sitting by the window. In the afternoon, when I choose an entirely different part of the house to shine in the windows, there is the little boy again, and for 2 weeks he has been doing this. Just following me around. I do feel so honored. And you, my good sun ray children, you should feel honored too. We do, said the sun rays. Listen now, said the sun. And they all stopped talking to listen. There was the little boy sitting by the window, and by him stood his mother and a big man with a low voice. The man was carrying a little black satchel and he was talking. Well, how are you today, my boy? He asked. Oh, much stronger and better, said the boy. I almost feel like getting out again. You'll be able to in a very few days now. Oh, doctor, said the mother, you have saved my little boy's life. He was so sick, but the doctor shook his head. I did not save his life, he said. The sun did that, The sun fights germs better than medicines or doctors. We are needed to tell the people to take advantage of the sun and use it, and we have to tell them what the trouble is. For the sun can't talk. If he could, he would be one of the greatest doctors in the world. For he always carries his cure with him. Ah, now he helps me drive away the colds, the many horrid sicknesses that come when little boys have to stay in the house. Dear father, said the sun rays, you are really Dr. Sun? And you my little assistant nurses, said the sun. What's the matter? Asked the earth. I'm tired, said the moon. All right, said the earth. My shadow is always ready for you to hide behind when you want it. You don't mind, do you? Asked the moon. I'm highly flattered, said the earth. It is a great honor. Lots of people come out and look at us both at such times. For people call it an eclipse. What do they mean by that? Asked the moon. They call it a total eclipse, said the earth, when there is no moon to be seen at all. My. And they use words like that, total eclipse, just to say that the moon can't be seen. Well, they do pay me a great compliment. The moon talked to the earth for a long time, and the earth's shawl or shadow kept the moon from sight for several hours. Before long the moon grew a little restless. I think I must be leaving, he said. Sorry to see you go, said the earth. You call on me so seldom. Your visits are so rare. Oh, laughed the moon, you are so nice to me, but where did you pick up that last word? Was it running around down on the earth where you heard it as it walked over you? Words don't run around, said the earth, but the people who use them do. That word means that your visits are so few. I'd like to see you oftener. Thank you, said the moon. Perhaps because I come only now and again it is better, for you see it is more of a treat. Maybe that is so, said the earth. I always enjoy looking at you from afar, but I do thoroughly enjoy your calls. Then I'll come some time again, said the moon. A horse, said Daddy, was very thirsty. I don't know how I can go on working so hard without a drink, he was trying to tell his master. But his master paid no attention. On and on they went. The horse's tongue became so dry, he hung it out of his mouth, but the master didn't notice, not even when he gave him a pat as he came out from a house where he had left a package. Now, a little fairy was hovering nearby. The fairy was the Princess Joy, and she was in her long dress of mist fog material. For the day was misty and there was a light fog, but not enough rain had fallen for the horse to wet his tongue. He had tried to hold his mouth open and get a drink that way, but the raindrops were not coming down. They were feeling shy and not like a trip to the earth. I'm so thirsty, said the horse again to himself. Thirsty, said the Princess Joy. Why doesn't your master give you something to drink? You're a good horse, you go wherever he wants you to go, and so willingly, too. You're so loyal and you are nice with his children and let them play with you whenever they want to. Can't he give you a drink? He has forgotten, said the horse. He doesn't mean to be cruel. He has just forgotten, that's all. Well, we'll attend to that, said the fairy Princess Joy. Now she knew that the horse's master and the Iceman did not like each other. I'll attend to this, she said to herself. The Iceman was delivering ice from house to house along the same street where the master was delivering his parcels. The Iceman had his ice in a little hand wagon he was pushing along himself. You shall have some fine ice water, whispered the fairy to the horse. The best of ice water, the fairy whispered to the Iceman, and though he didn't know that the fairy had told him to leave his wagon in just such a place, he did so. Now walk up a little bit, she said to the horse. The horse began to lick a fine piece of ice. Ah, such a drink as he had. The ice melted so fast against his dry tongue, and there was a great deal in the side of the wagon. He licked the ice until half of the piece had gone. Just then the Iceman and his master came out at the same time. There the horse was having his drink. You owe me for a piece of ice, said the Iceman. I can't sell that piece now. Why don't you give your horse some water? What are you, cruel to animals, This made the master feel very badly. I forgot, he murmured. I shall pay you for the ice and I'll never forget again. The first good speech I've heard you make. You've always been too careless and thoughtless before, but now we'll be friends, and I do believe you'll never forget your fine animal again. And the master agreed.